All right, Break 80 listeners, we have a guest for you tonight. You may or may not have seen Monday Q on social media. He's all over the place. We have Mr. Ryan French joining us. Thanks for coming on the pod, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
On a Monday, no less, too.
Yeah,
I
Monday
mean,
Q on a Monday.
it's it's a good day. It's the best day of the week, as we know.
Yeah. And you are probably the definitive expert on all things mini tours these days, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the good news for me is no one else covers it. So if you want this information, you got to come to one person, basically. So
That's nice. That's
you
good.
got to be pretty deep in the nerd weeds to want the information. But if you do, there's not a there's only one person really covering it extensively.
It's you. I've even tried to find it on PGA Tour, ESPN, small local fields. There's been some stories here associated with the 3M. You are the person.
No one is dumb enough to dedicate 7 years of their life to mini tour golf, but one person.
So I was reading something, and you can kind of tell us your story here if you want. Did I see that you kind of got your start with you and your dad went off and like caddied on mini tours
Yeah.
after college?
Yeah, so played college golf, and then yeah, after that, my dad and I was working, and we would go once a year. Like, my dad was the CEO of a really small company up here, and I was down in Detroit area running some restaurants, and we would, instead of going and playing, we would go caddy on a mini tour. And it was like no intention of it being anything, but it became a thing for us, and it was super cool. And we met a bunch of guys. I was lucky enough to caddy for Ryan Yip, a Canadian guy, when he won on the Canadian tour, and then he asked me to come caddy for him at Q school. So like when I had time off from work, I would do it, and just gave me great insight to what this life kind of looks like for these guys.
How do you start that process? Is it like the old days of caddying where you're just standing outside waiting for
It
players to shut trunks and you're running up to a bag to ask if you can do it that day?
it used to be super easy. So like this is like 2004 to like 2010, and mini tours were a lot bigger than they are now. And so like Hooters Tour, Canadian Tour wasn't associated with the PGA Tour. But those were like 150 player fields. And so uh we would just go. I mean, we learned the first time we just got a hold of the event, and it kind of made us realize like we had no real insight. I have always followed mini tour golf, but we didn't know like what the caddy scene looked like. And we called the caddy master, and he's like, "Do you know anything about golf?" And we're like, "Yeah, I played college golf, and my dad has played golf all his life and caddied for me, and junior events and those kind of things." And they were like so excited, like, "Yes, please come." And so we quickly realized that these mini tours back then had like either old members or kids who wanted to caddy and play. Not everyone took a caddy, but the few that did were excited to have a caddy that knew where to stand, you know, and knew what was happening in the golf world. So, um, yeah, I mean, it was crazy, and no one's dumb enough to do stuff like that.
They still do that kind of when the Canadian tour comes here in Minnesota to
Yeah,
Brainerd. They put a
yeah,
call out basically that said, "Hey, we need caddies," so and people
yeah.
show up and do it.
Yeah, there was back in the day when we went to the Canadian tour, we did that for a few years. The last few, like, you didn't have to take a caddy unless you were in like the last five or six groups, because they were shooting a show for Golf Channel. It was like a half-hour show called Chasing the Dream, and they wanted the perception that like the tour was legit and guys weren't carrying their own bag. So if you were in the last five or six groups, you had to take a caddy. It was pretty, like, again, little things like that. People would have no idea that world exists, but it really did.
So that's how you found kind of the passion around Mondays, around qualifying, around small
Yeah.
events. But you're and if anyone's curious, it's Monday Q Info on Twitter.
Yeah. A case of the Golf One is my handle, which is another story, and how little I thought this would ever be a thing. But yes.
But going from going from just your experience and understanding, hey, this Monday thing exists, these small tours exist. How do you transition that into eventually starting to become a journalist around these
Yeah.
events around Mondays?
Yeah. Zero plan whatsoever. Always just a
That's what we
golfer.
had.
Yeah. Just never even for a million years. So 7 years ago, my son had brain surgery. Our son had brain surgery, and I was running a group of restaurants. I was in the restaurant business, multi-unit manager, and my wife was a nurse. And um, I I left work for what I thought would be 6 weeks to take care of our son after his surgery, um, and started this Twitter account literally for myself. We have another daughter named Annie, and she was older, and so I was home with two very young kids. One was pretty sick, and so I started the Twitter account to have something to do for me. And the first idea was just, for those that don't know, Monday qualifiers are run by PGA Tour sections, and different ones run them each week. So scoreboards, leaderboards are not in one place. So the original idea was just a place where you could, one place where you could find all the leaderboards, like easy to find. And so it led into me telling a few stories, and that led into it becoming a thing. And, you know, 6 weeks in, my son was doing better. Our son was doing better. And it's like, okay, maybe I'll try it for 2 more weeks. But again, never in a million years did I think it would ever be a thing. And I never went back to work. 7 years later, here I am.
How do you get that data? How were you initially getting that information for those leaderboards? Because like we said, it's not published. Were you calling in or were you boots to the ground going to a
Yeah.
lot of
So
these?
a lot of times I would reach out when I was like brand new. I would reach out to the um, section and just say, hey, do you have someone on site? And they were like, they never had anyone really care about Mondays. So they were excited to have someone who like was caring. As the account grew, it was much easier. Like they found out who I was and like follow me on social media. So they're more willing to help. But yeah, those initial calls were just like, hey, I've started this Twitter account. I'm, following Monday qualifiers. If you could give me updates on like the playoff or anything interesting that happens, then let me know. Had no idea what he's doing. Never had a journalistic background. Anything. It's just, uh, yeah, it was just my golf nerdum has somehow paid off.
Do you remember back to your first, we'll call it quote unquote tour event? Because we've gone through it too, the credentialing process to become, as I put it, a real fake journalist, because we
Yeah.
have the similar amount of background in journalism as yourself. But do you remember that first event where you're like, oh my God, I'm a journalist out here?
Yeah. Well, I don't, what I'll say a few things. One, don't go to PJ Tour events. That's an advantage I have is I go to a lot of Monday Qual. I have gone to a bunch of PJ Tour events in my life, but very seldom as a credentialed person. So I knew PJ Tour events, you had to be a credential. Monday qualifiers, there's no such thing. So you just showed up. And that's what I've always done. Any event I went to, I didn't need a credential. That's changed a little bit. But the first event that I remember people carrying was 2008. I mean, really caring. My account had grown. I had maybe 10,000 followers, but um, the 2018 Honda Monday qualifier was the first time the section was sending me pictures and videos and like true shot to shot updates, and I was tweeting them out. And the Monday qualifier for the what used to be the Honda always was huge and leaked over to Tuesday morning all the time. It was Tuesday morning. My wife worked early in the morning, so I was responsible for taking the kids to work or school. And I started tweeting them out, and it ran into the time I was supposed to take my kids. I just remember tweeting, like, should I take my kids, be late to school, or should I take my kids to school or continue the updates? And I don't remember. I've never looked back. It was probably 50 responses, but it felt like 5,000 because I'd never had anything like that. And everybody's like, yes, just keep sending us,
Yeah.
updates.
Don't take those kids to
Yeah.
school.
No, no.
Yeah. So,
Day off's okay.
so I that's what I did. And my kids were an hour late for school. And I just sent up updates. And that was definitely my moment. Like, not that I was a journalist, but that people cared about what I was tweeting about for sure.
It to me with the Monday qualifiers before we get to mentor stuff, it's just I am always amazed, and I love some of your posts about don't quit your day job or whatever, stay in school, kids. Like how good some of these guys are. I know PGA Tour veteran Arjun Atwal showed up for the 3M a couple years ago, and they
Yeah,
play Victory Links, not a hard golf course, but had never seen the course and shot like 62. Just walked on, shot 62. It's insane.
yeah. I mean, I always say is like, um, the guys at Mondays, if everyone could play around with guys at Mondays, it would be the best player they've ever played with by far for 99.99% of players. Like, you know, again, I play a lot with Mark Baldwin, who's a business partner and a great friend, and people play with him and go, how haven't you made it? And that happens to these guys all the time, not just Mark. I just happen to be inside there. And it's like, Mark is amazingly good. I've told this story a few times, but Mark came up and caddied for me in the Alpena Open. His flight gets delayed. He We don't have an airport in the city I live, so he's like 3 hours away. His flight gets in at 2 in the morning. A lot of guys from the little hometown that I live in wanted to play with him. So we have a tee time at 7 in the morning. We get to my house like 4 a.m. We have a tee off time at 7. He's jet lagged, whatever. We sleep for 2 hours. We go up. Mark doesn't hit a single ball, a single putt, steps on the tee and shoots 67 at my home course, right? And it's
Yeah,
like,
it's amazing.
and people just have like never seen the course before, anything. And it's just like, not that it's a hard course, but it's like, this is a guy who can't make it. You know, it's I've said it for, I don't do it as much anymore, but for five years, the average you get through a Monday qualifier, the last spot was 65.8. So just gives you an idea.
It's amazing. I once played here years ago, probably a dozen years ago now, with a buddy and his friend who were both nationwide players a while
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
We were playing Somerset Country Club in Minnesota here, which is really nice and tough. And they both shot like 65, and these guys didn't make it. And the one was telling me he kicked around out there for multiple years. And he had some injury issues, but he got paired with like a 19-year-old Jason Day, like when he
Yeah.
first came out there. And he was like, after the tournament, I called my dad and said, I'm not good enough. Like it was
Yeah.
it's like otherworldly. And this is a guy that's like really good himself. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. I caddied in Will for Mark in Will Zalatoris' last Corn Ferry event. And I cannot explain it. I wish I would have like taken a video. I mean, his ball striking, as it still is, was unbelievable. We were like maybe 10 or 11 groups back from the lead, and he ended up finishing second, sucked 64. But it wasn't like, I mean, the course was really hard. It was cold, rainy. He didn't hit his driver very well, and his iron play was just ridiculous. And very, very rarely do two other pros talk about the pro in your group. But I remember Mark and Matt Atkins walking up 18, and we're like, what the hell was that? Like that is a different level.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was the last round he ever played on the Corn Ferry Tour. So, uh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then
So
there's
I'm
guys
curious
like
because we
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Timmy.
Mike.
Oh, well, there's guys like Patrick Flavin
Yeah.
who are great. Like how many Mondays is that guy qualified for? He's got to be like a record holder almost, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he just, went down to Mexico and Mondayed into the Americas tour, the Canadian and Latin American tour combined, and then finished seventh.
Yeah.
I tried to get him on the pod tonight, but his Wi-Fi in Mexico didn't work. So, yeah, I mean, he's Mondayed into, I think, 6 PGA Tour events, multiple Corn Ferry events, now in Americas. Yeah, I mean, that guy is so good. And again, guys like Patrick haven't made it yet. I think Patrick will eventually make it for sure. But it's like, if you played with Patrick, you would be like, how has this guy not made it?
I'm curious how those Monday rounds differ from what we see on TV Thursday through Sunday, just as far as aggression
Yeah,
or it just shooting your heart out because you really got one chance, right? You got 18
yeah.
holes
I had
to
a
make a
really
statement.
I had a really good conversation with David Duvall, a chance meeting. Like a follower of mine took me out to a course in Denver, and Duvall was there, and so I
Is
introduced
this
myself.
former number one, David
Yes,
Duvall?
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And he said, I said Monday, I said I run the company. He's like, oh yeah, no. And he's like, those Mondays, fuck that, man. It's too crazy. He's like, I played a few and couldn't even sniff it. And he said, but his point is like, but bring him inside the ropes and I can usually beat him. He's like, I can shoot 68, or back in the day, he could shoot 68, 69 on any course. And but shooting 64, you just never needed to do it on the PGA Tour back when David played, right? Like shoot 68 4 days in a row, you're going to be in the mix. And so, it's definitely more aggressive. The courses are easier. Course setups are a little bit easier. And those guys don't have any fear and they play super aggressive. And that's why, I mean, obviously a lot of the name guys that are in PGA Tour Mondays are on the back half of their career often. So that's definitely part of it. But also, those guys haven't, longtime PGA Tour veterans haven't had to go super low. Obviously, that's changed a little bit in the PGA Tour. But again, like this week, I think it was like 12 under one, right? That's 69 4 days in a row. So it's it's just a different type of event. Easier course that brings a lot more people into play. Super aggressive, not what those guys are used to. Easier pins, all of those things. So uh it's definitely it's definitely an advantage to young guys, or guys who haven't been on the PGA Tour in the Mondays. Then when you get them out on the course, pressure of it's only one chance, pressure of playing in your first or one of your few PGA Tour events, tougher courses, crowd, all of those things make it harder for them to make cuts.
I love it when the pros are in the Monday and they're stuck in it and they and they just fucking walk off after a few holes and just quit. One of my former high school players won a section event in Arizona, so he got into the Monday qualifier for TPC Scottsdale, and he said Moon Bay was like in front of them and just quit. Just it was like three over, and just walked right off. Never showed back up again.
Matt, this was a funny story. Matt is we're playing like when I caddied for Mark, I don't introduce myself as Monday Q info. It's just weird. And so like I just say I'm Ryan. And some people don't know who I am. And so we're playing in a group with Matt Every at the Houston Monday qualifier, actually, I think 2 years ago. And so like we're going along. I don't know what happened, but somehow he figures out that I run the account Monday Q info. And he goes, "Hey man, you got me in trouble." He said I was dating a new girl and you said I hit two ball. He said I played two holes at the Waste Management Monday qualifier. Like I made bogey and then I hit two in the water and made nine on the second hole and just walked off. He's like, and her parents thought I was like quit her or something. And I was like, well, did you do that? I was like, was it accurate? He's like, well, yeah, I did it. And I was like, well, dude, you can't be mad at me. Like I'm just reporting what happened. And he was super cool about it. He was like good sport about it. Just it was quite funny.
What is that grind like for those guys though? You mentioned, you have to make birdies out there. You need to go for flags. You can be bad enough. You're walking off courses. You know you're not going to make it if you have two doubles or a double and a bogey in a round. There's no shot. What's it like for that grind out there for just travel logistics for
Yeah,
showing up, and trying
I mean,
trying these every week?
financially, it's rough. Depending on where you're traveling from, obviously, but usually $1,500 or more. Uh, just to tee it up, $500 entry fee if you don't have status, flight, hotel for a couple nights at least, car, all of those things adds up pretty quickly. And I mean, the fact is, it's 100 guys, 90 of them or 85 of them can easily shoot 65. uh, and you got to be one of the four. Scott Fawcett, who runs an entire company based on numbers, says if you're a good player, getting through a normal Monday is about 7% odds. And so you're talking about a playing 100, you're going to get through seven. That's pretty rough odds. And so uh, it can be a drag. Go back to Patrick Flavin. Like Patrick doesn't have any status, so has to play pre-qualifiers. And, you know, that's not totally accurate. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he got through basically every pre-qualifier and played really well in the Monday. So it was like 67, 67, 69, 68, 67, and hadn't gotten through any Mondays. It gets super frustrating. It's like you're playing very good golf and beating a majority of the field every week, but it doesn't really matter, you know? Uh, players say all the time is like, I'd rather shoot 74 than like 68, 69, 67 and not get in because it just becomes super frustrating. At least 74, you're like, okay, I didn't have it this week. Just like this isn't I didn't have my best stuff. But when you're like shooting 67, you're playing really well. Just maybe a few long putts that would need to go in to get to 65 don't. And so it can get really mentally tough. Um, I caddied for Mark Baldwin like 6 in a row, and Mark played good. He played a couple that were bad, but you're at that 6-1, and you'd like to say like, "Oh, hey man, I have a chance here." But that first bogey, and you're like, "Oh my God, here we go again." I've flown across the country, I've taken a flight. Like, Mark has a kid, like my wife and kid are at home, and I'm gonna shoot 71, finish 35th, and waste $1,500, and back I go again. So it's a grind, but golf has many more downs than ups, and you just got to hold on to the ups.
And I know for those players that we recognize, those names that we know, there's some guaranteed money when you get to the event, when you get to the PGA Tour event. For those guys that are Monday queuing in, if they get in to the PGA Tour event, is there any guaranteed money, or are they still fingers crossed? We have 2 more rounds to play to try to make this cut and still try to
Yeah,
make any money.
yeah, it's very ironic. I say this all the time: is there's no. This could be a whole conversation. Obviously, the stars drive the PGA Tour. Not arguing that. They deserve the money they get, but if you're in the field, you get $5,000 now uh, a week, except for the guys that really need it. The Monday qualifier, sponsor exemptions, they don't get it. And so, Mark has always said Monday qualify, and that's when the real expenses start. Great one is Kevin Elwin, tweeted and actually helped raise some money, but uh, he just Monday qualified for Valspar, and the hotels were insane in Florida. Insane. I mean, he spent $2,200 on 2 hotel rooms for
Jesus.
him and his wife, and I mean, and they weren't like they're like Holiday Inn or Marriott or whatever, for 2 hotel rooms for the week, right? And it's like you got a caddy. If your friend doesn't do it, you're talking caddy $1,500 to $2,000. You get a car, obviously for free, but there's you're looking at $5,000 more to tee it up, and $5,000 for these guys, a lot of these guys is rough, and so got to make a cut, 100%. And that then I just talked to Callum McNeil, who just wanted to qualify his first PGA Tour event, and that's the mental side of being a Monday qualifier. Is like these guys have gone into every event they've ever played thinking about winning, and then you get into your first PGA Tour event Monday. It's hard to not think like, oh, I just need to make the cut because you're guaranteed $35,000, $40,000, right? But you can't think like that. That's not how these guys play. It's like, I'm good enough to win. You have to believe that. There's no reason to be out there if you don't think that. And then you just change everything because you're like, oh my God, I'm $5,000, $6,000 in debt for the week. I just got to make a cut. And you start to do things that you wouldn't normally do. So all of those things, add up to making Mondays difficult.
This is a
Do you
good
think they're going to
segue.
be this is just the last topic here, while we're on it, a little bit controversial, but do you think that the call for a smaller tour are going to make Mondays more difficult? Is Monday qualifying going to stay around forever when there's these calls to start shrinking the total tour size on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that that's not the case, but yeah, I'm definitely afraid we're headed for 2 live type tours. And again, I'm sure you guys have done a million podcasts on this, and it's super disappointing. I hope I hope that the PGA Tour, again, stars drive it. I'm not trying to pretend like they don't. They should have some say in what the future looks like. I don't think that the PGA Tour can just stand pat because they have a competitor now that's taking stars. But going away completely in some respects from what has made the PGA Tour successful really boggles my mind. And I hope that that's not the case. But I definitely see a future. Not saying this is true, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if it's Monday qualifiers in 10 years or 5 years aren't part of it. I hope that's not the case, but I could definitely I could definitely see it. The fact is they don't bring in any they bring in some money very minimally on uh entry fees and those kind of things, but the players don't bring in anything. They don't sell any tickets, all of those things. But I really think I think Malnati's uh win is a small part of what the PGA Tour is. Again, someone responded to me yesterday, like, oh, everybody, like, if Peter Malnati wins all the time, the PGA Tour is dead. Yeah, but he doesn't. And amongst all the stars winning, the Peter Malnati story stands out. And so uh, I hope that that continues to be the case.
Yeah, everybody loves
Yep.
an underdog, and I think though whoever messaged you doesn't really understand that there's probably just a handful of golf courses in the whole schedule where Peter Malnati has a chance to win, and Innisbrook happens to be one of them. Due to some dog
Yep.
legs, tightness, and whatever. So it's not like he doesn't even have. I bet you he himself goes to half the events. And like you said, I'm sure he thinks he can win, but in the back of his mind, he's probably like, "This is not a good fit for me." Like playing Torrey
Yeah,
Pines South or somewhere.
There's only so many places with the
100%.
weather for a bucket hat too. Bucket hats aren't
Yeah,
appropriate
it's
everywhere.
true. Yeah, it's so true. So true.
The have you ever Well, here's a question for you. You have more insight than me. I can't wrap my brain around, and part of the live stuff too, and all this is the PGA's own fault. They uh they keep giving these exemptions, to veteran players, the JJ Henrys and the Ted Potters, and like I've never been able to figure out how they can't come together with like the Corn Ferry and have a system where get some of the top Corn Ferry guys up there, but then get them they can still get points on the Corn Ferry if they do well, so that they feel like it's worth going and playing in the PGA Tour event. Like we had Frankie Sappin on the pod a long time back. He played the PG. They gave him an invite here to the 3M, and he made the cut. It was kind of a gamble for him because he was at that 30, right around like
Yeah.
35th or something like that, and he didn't get any points that week. He only made the
And he
cut here at the
really and he
PGA Tour.
struggled after that. And Frankie's
Yes.
really good. So it's like, yes. Here's what I will say. I wish in a perfect world that's the case, but I think what the PGA Tour really, really, really sucks at is marketing any players on the Corn Ferry Tour. So when they get to the PGA Tour, either an exemption or when they graduate from the Corn Ferry Tour, people don't know who these guys are. And the best example of that, going back to Will Zalatoris, is like Will graduated from the Corn Ferry because of COVID. He got into it, whatever. He got into some U.S. Opens and stuff, and he's doing well. And people are like, "Who's Will Zalatoris?" And we're like, Will Zalatoris has been one of the best players in the world since he was 12 years old, right? The fact that people don't know who he is PGA Tour's fault, like flat out. He should be marketed. All those young guys, Frankie, like Fred Biondi, all of those young guys should be marketed as heavily. Like that's all they have to do on the Corn Ferry Tour is tell stories. So when these guys get to the PGA Tour, we should know who they are.
Yeah, like Scotty Scheffler, he was out there and
100%.
he won a shitload when he was young and everything, and
Yeah.
he's almost unbeatable when he's making a few putts now, and he nobody knew his name either.
Yeah.
So
It's like
so based on
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, based on that, for 2024, what's kind of the biggest headline that you've seen now? Something that's obscure for us, but a big headline for your line of work on Monday Q or within
Yeah,
Corn Ferry, or those
I
coming
think
up.
it's probably the same thing. I mean, America's tour coming together, uh, PGA Tour Canada and Latin America, see how it plays out, and see what the guys do once they get it. But yeah, I mean, where is Monday qualifiers and where does this second tier tour live in the in the realm of pro golf, does the Corn Ferry survive? Does it become the Corn Ferry? You know, we are in a world of unknowns right now, and I think players feel that. We obviously talk about it all the time, all of us. So, um, yeah, I obviously think not at the top. I think at the bottom, and feel for guys who, you know, might not have a place to play here in a couple of years.
Do you
Yeah, bring
know?
back the Dakotas tour.
Well, that's still a thing.
Dakota's still
I
going.
know, I know,
Oh
I
yeah,
Dakota's still
know.
strongly going.
there.
Um,
I guarantee you. I don't know. You might have already done some stories, but there are definitely stories to be had in Yankton, South Dakota
oh
on the
man,
Dakotas tour.
I tried so hard to get. One day we're gonna do a full. I just got to get players to agree to give me like all access, unsolicited when we go to the cock. What's the strip club called? The
Yeah, I was just gonna say that
uh
it's a famous strip club for those guys in the Dakota tour. I can't remember
Oh
the name of
yeah,
it
Lord.
I
though.
and if I could just get like a true unedited, let guys really, do it up. Uh, I will do a show up there. The
Well, I
Oh,
the
got some bad news. Unless you've got some strings that I don't know about pulling, they don't let cameras in strip clubs, boys.
Oh, I
well,
don't mean
there's
this. I mean, I'll probably eventually will end up there, but I'm saying just like the whole party is out of control. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's
Yankton, huh?
lots of
yeah,
strip club mini tour stories. We had Tom Hoagie on
Oh,
here a while
oh
back,
yeah,
and he was strip clubbing in Winnipeg when he was on the Canadian tour. He had to stay
yeah,
above the strip club or something.
yeah, yeah. That's good. I mean, again, mini tours are where where the real stories happen.
Here's a question for you. Now that they've merged, Latin America and Canadian Tour and whatever Corn Ferry on this one thing, are they giving these guys any kind of stipend to like go down to Argentina and play?
No, and
Oh my
again,
God.
The PGA Tour, understandably, in some cases, like they don't care about those guys because they know that vacuum will be filled endlessly. And so, I mean, the Americas Tour still has an entry fee that the players have to pay. It's minimal. It's
Yeah.
$300, but again, it's a look into the fact that, and again, they are right.
Yeah.
It's a vacuum. And so if one guy quits because of financial reasons, they know there's 20 guys, 50 guys, 100 guys waiting to fill that spot. So,
You'd
uh,
almost have to have backing from somebody because I know like the same former player that got into the Monday last year before this big merger last year, 2 years ago, he had got partial status to play a bunch of Latin America events, and he's like, "Well, I can't go. I don't.
yeah,
It costs way too much money to go down there. I can't even go do it, even though I got the status to do it."
yeah, 100%. I mean, guys do that all the time as they get, I mean, it happens on the Corn Ferry Tour. It's like guys, finish down at final stage and they have to go chase Mondays and they go to the first three and then they're out of money. It's like, I mean, $5,000 to me is a ton of money. So,
Yeah,
like,
mhm.
to golfers who don't have jobs and like $5,000, you know, not everyone comes from money where you can just go like, yeah, I'm going to go chase these Mondays. And so, yeah, a lot of guys get financial support from guys at their club or whatever, but
Well, some players,
eventually, go ahead.
I was going to say, some players took so long to develop too, though. You've got a
Yeah,
Brooks Koepka that had to go overseas for years, and
yeah,
we could be missing out on a lot of potential talent because the PGA
I,
Tour is a little bit short-sighted in
yeah. I
finding a way
mean,
to give money back to the lower levels.
yeah, I say it all the time, guys. Is like, a large portion of players took years to get where they're at, and uh, it's like that's pro golf. It's changed now, but I think it was used to be like took the average golfer like 4.2 years to get to the PGA Tour, right? And some of those guys become stars. And fact is, if we keep limiting this field of how players get, we're missing out on players that took time to develop but have the potential to be stars. And so, Brooks is a great example. It's no one knew who Brooks Koepka was outside of super golf nerds. He was like a very good college player, but he wasn't like exceptional. Didn't sign big contracts or anything out of high school or out of college. Went to the Challenge Tour, playing in the middle of nowhere. No one knew who Brooks Koepka was, um, and has obviously become who he is. So Uh, yeah, I
So who
development.
should we have on next then?
I,
Who's a couple up and coming stars that you've seen in Monday qualifying that would be good targets for us to talk to before they become the next
yeah,
Aberg?
that's a Cooper Dossie is probably the one that I always say. I can get you in touch with Cooper, but yeah, Cooper Dossie plays Corn Ferry. Um, Played at Baylor. Kid's a stud. So uh, he would be my number for a long time. I said he was uh, going to be the next. He had status. He has status this year, but the best player without status. Austin Hitt is a great story.
Oh, great
Um,
golf name.
yeah, it's a
Great
great.
golf
He
name.
played. He played with Ryan Gerard at North Carolina. He's a super. So those would be the two that I would say
Oh yeah.
uh, they're going to be studs.
We know Gerard. We walked with Gerard a bunch on tour events.
Oh yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Well, my call for rookie of the year on the PGA Tour has not panned out so far. ADDC. He's
Oh
he's uh
yes.
he was a absolute stud. Just went right on the corn ferry and kicked ass. He's really struggled on the PGA Tour this year.
I just talked to a PGA Tour player who said who graduated this year, and he said, "Man, does the Corn Ferry Tour not prepare you for PGA Tour life?" He's like, these courses are gigantic and huge, and they're all getting there for the first time, uh, and it just takes some getting used to. But yeah, I think a lot of us, me included, thought ADD would be, you know,
Yeah.
doing damage, and uh, because I'm a pessimist, I often start looking for names on a PJ Tour leaderboard by starting at the bottom and just like lessens my disappointment when I see one of my friends at the bottom. I don't know why, but I always do, and it's been weird to see him near the bottom a lot. And
When you said that the player talked about the PGA Tour courses being so big, I think it even makes Ludwig what Ludwig's done even more impressive.
yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah, 100%. I mean, it's it is. I mean, I've been lucky enough to play a couple of PGA Tour courses. Obviously, I'm like an amateur, but people just cannot appreciate how hard PGA Tour. I played them a couple of days before the events. It's like these are courses that you just cannot appreciate how hard they're set up and those kind of things. So it is it is a tough transition from college and the Corn Ferry Tour to the PGA Tour for sure.
Now, on that same course conversation, because so many of these qualifying sites are public golf courses, are there any ones that you'd recommend to folks as, wow, this was a great golf course? Like they got to play this as the qualifying site, or oh, I never want to go back to that city again.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is they're usually decent golf courses, but sometimes, they're pretty rough and, pretty average golf courses. They changed it this year to a really nice course, but the Waste Management Monday qualifier used to be um, at McCormick Ranch in Scottsdale.
Oh
And
no. Oh God.
yeah,
I played
yeah,
McCormick Ranch.
yeah. McCormick Ranch is a classic factory, like as many tee times as you can get in one day. Mats on the range. It is very Monday qualifier esque. And I said I've told this story many times, but the day before they don't clear any tee times for practice rounds, and so guys will come and just group in uh, with other players. The first time I went, uh, they call the name for those that have been to Cormorant Ranch. They call it over a loudspeaker, and then you go to the tee, and it was like Smith, Jones, and then Jones, and then Chaka. I was like, oh my God, that's Alex Chaka. And so I'm standing at the tee, and these guys, random uh, amateurs that none were going to break 100. And I was like, hey guys, do you know who that is and who you're playing with? And they said, no. And I was like, that's Alex Chaka. He's won a bunch on the PJ
Yeah.
Tour and the
Oh my
European
God.
Tour.
Bet
And
you that was a
poor
fun round for him.
Alex. Yeah, poor Alex. I mean, I watched the first tee, and those guys, obviously, after I told them that, they were amazingly nervous, so that didn't help. But no one hit it over 120. off the first tee, and it was. But that's Monday Q Life. Good courses. I mean, they have really gotten better. Um, this the popularity of golf has really hurt Monday qualifiers because courses don't want Monday qualifiers anymore. But what it's led to is a lot of private courses lending their course on Monday when a lot of private courses are closed, uh, and making a little extra money on a day that the course is closed anyway. So,
Oh,
um,
that's perfect.
yeah, it's led to a lot of that. Um, so, yeah, I think the courses overall have probably gotten a little bit better, but I miss the old times of like Mats and Munis and 62s and all of those kind of things.
Well, we
What
don't want
day,
to take go ahead,
what
Terry.
day do we, this is the most important day or one. What day do we need to show up to possibly get paired with a former or kind of down on his
Yeah,
luck PGA Tour pro
Sunday.
practicing for their Monday qualifier? Are they out on
Sunday,
Sundays, Saturdays?
Sunday, yeah, Sunday mornings.
Sunday Victory Links.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the fetch, yeah, 100% Sunday. Victory links will 100% be, there'll be tons of pros out there. And what pros want to do is, so often the course will say, hey, you can't do a practice round till 2 o'clock. And pros know that if they just show up, eventually they'll find a spot. And so a lot of guys will be, just book a threesome at Victory Links like 9:30, 10 o'clock on that Sunday, and you'll 100% get paired with a pro.
Nothing like a Monday
Perfect.
at Victory Links in the middle of end of July when it's 100 degrees
Yeah.
and the walks between some of the greens and tees there are about half a mile. It's the worst walking course of all time.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
take
we're karting. They're walking.
I got one
yeah,
last question for you before I let you
sure.
go here. It has to do with chipping and Mr. Phil Mickelson.
Oh shit.
I saw this
Yeah.
this article you wrote. You got some lessons from maybe the greatest short game player ever?
Yeah. So Mark Baldwin has become friendly with Phil, and that's a long story of how it happened. But I sent Phil a message and said, "This is the shortened version: is hey, you played a money match with Phil or with Mark a long time ago to get you ready for a season. Mark's trying to go to second stage of Q or is going to second stage of Q school. Will you get him? Will you play a match with him to get him ready?" And I never like Phil and I have. This is crazy to say out loud, but Phil and I have messaged back and forth a few times. Uh, which is crazy. He follows me for some reason because his career is the opposite of what I cover. But he's told me some things, and I guess I've earned his trust. And so I sent him a message. Didn't think he would respond, honestly. And he messaged me 2 hours later and just said, "Yeah, here's my cell phone. Give it to Mark and have him text me." And then he's just been beyond generous to Mark. I mean, like Mark said, if he played 9 holes with me, that would have been insane. If he gave me an hour-long lesson, that would be insane. And they've probably played 150 holes together. Mark's been out to his house and, he's helped him a ton with his short game, helped him with a lot of stuff. It's been crazy. So Mark went out there and then he said, "Hey, why don't you tell Ryan to come out for a day, 2 days?" And yeah, I have the chipping yips for those that don't follow me, that don't know. I talk about it often. And so I'm a pretty decent player, but I've had the chipping yips for years. And so uh meeting Phil Mickelson, and then 30 seconds later he said, "Yeah, let me look at your chipping." And I have the yips. And so for those that have ever had the yips, pressure creates worse chipping yips. And there's not much pressure like one of the greatest short game players in the world saying, "Hey, let me see some chips." So yeah, it's pretty embarrassing to be a decent golfer and hit skulls and chunks in front of Phil. But yeah, I went. He gave me some lessons there. Gave me some lessons on the course. Then the next morning, we went to his house and he gave me lessons in his backyard in his personal range. It was yeah, it was the most surreal 48 hours of my life. It was raining.
No,
I didn't have rain gear, so Phil gave me some of his own rain gear with his own logo on it. We're in Phil Mickelson's backyard hitting Phil Mickelson logoed balls. Those are the balls he has on his Rangers. Have are Callaway balls with his own logo on them. and Phil Mickelson was giving me short game lessons. It was the most insane moment of my golfing life.
Does what was I gonna say? Can't remember. Oh, was he easy to understand? Like when he starts talking golf stuff, like when he's been on some broadcasts and stuff in the past, like it is so complex to listen to him talk. I'm like, oh my gosh, can the average golfer like understand what he's saying?
Yeah, I mean, yes, he's way above most of our heads, my head included, but yeah, he simplified it pretty well. And when you have the yips, like every chip I made, I did something different, right? Like, oh, that didn't work, so I'll try this. And I haven't played a full round of golf. Oh, I played one full round of golf since I did, and I yipped one, but the rest I chipped really well. But what I always say is like he gave me what I should be doing. So no matter if I keep yipping, I at least know that I have the right technique. It's like, okay, if you keep doing this, this is the right thing. So uh I mean he knows more about golf than I mean it's ridiculous. But he really did simplify it. I'm sure he understood his subject was not like I mean he watched me chip for 5 skulls across the green. So he's like, I gotta keep this pretty simple for this dude.
Well, if you want to respond back to our email that we sent for this invite with Phil's cell phone, we'll gladly take it because I shanked two
I
within 60 yards during over this weekend. So
I promise like Phil Mickelson being in my phone and me sending a text. I sent him a text today actually. And it's like you never look at a text more than you do like, okay, is this right? Is this like is he gonna be okay with this? Like one of the greatest golfers of our time. It's not just like, hey Phil, Ryan. It's like I've one time he said to Mark, like you gotta stop introducing yourself. Like you don't have to say every time, like, I know who it is, man. It's quite surreal. All of it is he's been no matter what you think of Phil's place in the professional game, it really has been great to a friend, and that's it. He's been super cool.
That's awesome. Well, Tim, you got anything else for Ryan?
that is it over here. Excellent story.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, we really appreciate your time. Do you want to tell the listeners where to find you on websites and everything? Because you guys do a lot of articles and subscriptions, right?
Yeah. MondayQ.com. Yeah, we do subscriptions. It's hard to remain independent in the media world. Tried my best to do that. And so, yeah, subscriptions help us. $50 a year. MondayQ.com, MondayQ info on Twitter and Instagram. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it. We'll let you get back to, I don't know whatever you're doing, get writing articles probably.
Yeah, I have a
Uh,
big article coming out. Some crazy, crazy story from a long time ago, but it's pretty insane.
all right. Well,
So
thank you so much.
thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.